Hello and welcome back to the Sky and the Shy podcast. I'm your host, Edwin Garcia. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the 4 regular season games the Chicago Sky have already played, what's been going on in the injury report, and what's to come for the Chicago Sky. Let's get into it. So on the last episode of Sky and the Shy podcast, it was right before the regular season officially began, and I talked about my predictions for the season, talked about what I thought was going to happen with the team. I ultimately decided on 19-13 would be the record, and let's talk about what's actually occurred so far. There have been 4 games, there have been some ups, there have been some downs, so let's briefly go through the 4 games that have happened and kind of the results, little mini game recaps, and then we'll get into the injury report and what's happening and the games that are coming up next for the Sky. So the season opener, I think, was absolutely the highlight so far of the season. The Sky won 70-56, so they absolutely demolished the Washington Mystics. It was never really a game. The Chicago Sky were dominant throughout. And what I really found impressive was, of course, Candace Parker. I mean, I think we all knew Candace Parker was a bona fide superstar. That's why the city has been in such a buzz with her presence and her arrival. But it's one thing to know she's a superstar, and it's another thing to actually see it in action with the team. And in that context, you know, it was the highest of highs for Skytown. You know, Candace Parker had 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. She was absolutely dominant. It was really impressive seeing her as well kind of play that point forward position where sometimes she would take the responsibility of running the offense, which is usually Courtney Vandersloot's job. And she would initiate actions, kind of be a veteran leader on the court, you know, passing the ball in the right spots, telling people about what rotations they need to make, where the advantages were, where to swing the ball. It was really great to see. And it was nice to see Courtney Vandersloot kind of have another floor general on the court with her, able to take that responsibility. Sometimes Candace Parker would even bring the ball up and then initiate the action past the half court. Sometimes Vandersloot would bring the ball up court and then give it to Candace Parker at the top of the key, and then the actions would begin. So it was really impressive seeing that. And the team looked great, 70-56 win. Pretty much just an all-around great game. Kalia Copper had 19 points. Parker, as I mentioned, had 16. Vandersloot had 4 assists, 3 points. So an average game for her, but when you really watched the game, she was really comfortable and was just kind of letting everyone kind of do their thing. So it was overall a very positive experience. Probably the only negatives was Dawson missed a lot of shots. She didn't have a spectacular game by any means. But, you know, it was just game 1, so you don't expect everyone to play perfect right off the jump, but that was probably the only sort of negative. And then Quickly didn't look too comfortable coming off the bench. She wasn't very as effective as she normally is. Obviously, she's transitioning, if that's the case, from starter to bench player with Kalia Copper and Diamond DeShields, you know, now kind of solidified in the starting lineup. It kind of has taken Quigley out, but it gives the Sky an amazing 3-point shooter coming off the bench. And I think that given a few games and reps, Quigley's going to adjust to that. She's still a very, very important part of the team, and I expect her to be her normal all-star self after a couple games. But after game 1, everything was great. Undefeated season underway. Fantastic, right? Well, during shoot around in between the first game and the second game, unfortunately, Candace Parker got an injury. She injured her ankle. She sprained her ankle, and that was the beginning of just a negative road with Candace Parker and her health. So she had to miss the next game against the Atlanta Dream, and so did Allie Quigley with a hamstring issue. And Azrae Stevens, of course, missed game 1 and she missed game 2. So now the injury report's starting to stack up. We had 3 players out against the Atlanta Dream. We had Parker, Quigley, and Stevens out. So again, the Sky are already a pretty short-handed team. The WNBA rosters are of 12 players, and the Sky only have 11 available, even when everyone's healthy, due to salary cap restrictions. They only have 11 players available. You take out these 3, the Sky only had 8 players available, so that's really rough. You only have 3 bench players. That means that the players that are available are going to have to pick up more work, and they're going to have to do a little bit more than they're normally asked. And not to mention, the 3 players missing are a key starter, a key bench player, and Azrae Stevens is also playing significant minutes. Usually he's up there in the 20-minute range or so when she does play. So that's a lot of minutes that you have to try to make up, and it just was a little bit too much for the Sky to make up. And the game reflected that. It was a very ugly game, a very bad game. It really felt like a game You'll take a win is a win. I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. But it was an ugly win. The team didn't shoot very well. It was very sloppy. Really, honestly, the reason I think they won was just the Atlanta Dream just had a terrible first and second quarter. 12 points in the first, 14 points in the second. They got it together a little bit more in the second half, but again, it ended up being too little too late, and the Sky won 85-77. So again, that's where you kind of saw that, hey, at least the team could survive missing that many players against maybe a lower tier team, but they did not look tremendous doing it. And of course, there's a lot of reasons for that with all the injuries, but still, it was definitely not a positive sign. You take the W and you move on to your next game and hope that the team can get healthy and kind of continue to win while still trying to figure out what's going on here. Unfortunately for the Sky, the next game was against the New York Liberty, who are red hot. They got Sabrina Ionescu, who's right now a young phenom. The WNBA definitely loves her, and they like talking about her, that's for sure. She's very talented, of course, but I just personally feel like she gets, kind of crowned early as this already, she's basically a Hall of Fame player, prove me wrong kind of scenario. But hey, all props to her. She's an incredible player, and she is playing incredibly well. And the New York Liberty are playing incredibly well. So the New York Liberty Chicago Sky game was definitely a tough matchup for this guy. It didn't help that, again, Candace Parker still out. That ankle injury maybe was a little bit more serious than we thought. She was obviously very heartbroken, missing the home game. The first home game for the Chicago Sky of the season, her first game playing from Chicago, in Chicago. She made a really nice long post talking about how if she could be out there, she would, and how it was so, hurtful for her that she couldn't help her teammate and couldn't be there playing, in front of family and friends and all of that. And then she posted a picture of her ankle, which was just really kind of graphic, very, very swollen. It looked like a destroyed orange that was swelled up, and it was rough. Rough to see, but that's the realities of the sport. It's a tough game. And she obviously was not going to play on that ankle, so she missed the game. Again, Allie Quigley still having issues with her hamstring. And Stephanie Dawson officially out as well because she's playing with Team USA, playing through the tournament that they've had because they're trying to prep and get ready for the qualifiers, which are later this month, because they are trying to qualify for the Olympics. So for those who don't know, this year the Olympics have decided they're going to include 3-on-3 basketball as a separate Olympic event with the obviously the standard 5x5 basketball. Now it's going to be a 3-on-3 tournament as well. And Team USA is trying to qualify both the men's and the women's. And they're getting ready for qualifications in the tournament that's coming up here late in May. So Dawson's out doing those responsibilities, which is great for her. Tremendous honor. Representing Skytown as well by being on that team and representing Team USA as well. So I'm really excited and happy for her. I'm sure all of Skytown is as well. But it does mean she's going to miss significant playing time here during those events. And that's a starting center that's missing. So you have a starting center that's missing. You have your starting power forward that's missing. You have your ideally first option off the bench missing. And again, a team with only 11 players. Now you're down to 8 again, short roster. Positive was Shyla Heal made her WNBA rookie debut, which was really exciting. Again, Shyla Heal, she had a lot of trouble kind of getting into the country. Again, COVID's made everything so much more difficult, and we've talked about this on the very first podcast, how she struggled to actually join the team. She missed all of training camp. She finally got on the team, got on the roster, got some practices in, and now she made her debut. It was a modest debut, just 5 minutes, didn't really do much, but she did play, and that's an important big step for her. I'm sure it was a big day for her that she'll remember for the rest of her career. Now, the game ultimately ended in a defeat. The Sky lost 93-85. They kept it tight for the most part, but the New York Liberty just had a little bit too much firepower, and it was a little bit too much for the Sky to overcome. So they lose the home opener here, which was the first loss, undefeated season, officially over. Got their first loss, 2-1. Good play from Diamond DeShields, 22 points. Ruthie Hebert had 15, and Astu Nadu Fall had 17. So I think there were some positives, but again, it was just a little bit too much firepower from the Liberty for the Sky to overcome in that fourth quarter. So you take the first loss and you move on from there. No one wants to lose the home opener, but it happens, and now they're 2-1 heading into the final game we're going to talk about, which was the game that just happened on Tuesday night. And that's the rematch Chicago Sky Atlanta Dream game from a couple of games before. And this one ended not in a positive way for the Chicago Sky. They lost 90-83. And again, still missing Candace Parker. Still missing Allie Quigley. Dawson's going to be out the rest of the month, so she's obviously still gone. And the teams, again, was just same story. Short-handed. All those players missing. We don't know when they're coming back. We'll get into that in a little bit more. And the Sky, just this time, the ugly side of them stayed, but the Dream actually stepped up. The Dream improved. They shot better. They rebound better, and they got the win 90-83. So it was just a little bit too much. And I think at this point, the team is now 2-2 after 4 games, and I feel like the fatigue of having to do so much, and we'll talk about what players those are that are kind of asked to carry more weight than they normally are. I think it's just becoming too much, and the team just doesn't have enough with these 8 specific players, missing those 3 players, not being able to have them make an impact on the game. I just think it's a little bit too much for them to overcome right now, and hopefully we get a healthier Candace Parker, Allie Quigley in the coming weeks, because they're going to need it. So let's actually get into that now. Let's get into the injury report and kind of what we know about these injuries. So at the time of this recording of this podcast, which is on Wednesday, it'll be up for patrons on Thursday, and it'll be up for everyone else on Friday. So again, make sure you're joining me on Patreon. Patreon's helping fund these podcasts and videos that I'm doing for the Chicago Sky. I've been doing articles for the Chicago Sky for a couple years now on my skyandtheshy.wordpress.com website, but now we're ramping things up, having a little bit more of a video presence, doing some bi-monthly videos on the Chicago Sky and this bi-monthly podcast. So supporting me on Patreon not only supports my work, it supports more coverage of the Chicago Sky and the WNBA in general, and it allows me the ability to have the resources to continue doing this and to continue putting in the effort and time and energy and work that I do to create these things. So if you haven't joined yet, I highly suggest you do it. I'll have a link in the description to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/ecreate88, and again, the link will be there. So you can start for as low as $1. They just charge you at the first of the month, $1, and that'll definitely give you access to my Patreon only posts. It'll give you access to everything that I'm sharing on there, and you'll be able to have one place where you can just look and see. All I post on there is pretty much just the articles and videos that I do, so it's a really nice way to kind of keep that organized and know exactly if you want to see what's going on with Chicago Sky. Just go there on Patreon and it'll be readily available. If you're at the $5 and above tier, you also get all the videos a day early. So like I said, this video will actually go up on Thursday for patrons and on Friday for everyone else. So I'm making sure everything is still available to everyone, but you get that little extra, 24 hours heads up notice, 24 hours in advance video if you're supporting and at the $5 and higher tier. And the super high one, which I really like the name for it, $25, you're considered a Hall of Famer. So all the tiers have these interesting names. So if you ever want to be in a Hall of Fame, I have access for you that can help you do that. I have a way for you to achieve that dream. So come join me, be a patron at the $1 tier or at the high range at the Hall of Famer tier. I'd love to have you on, and it always makes my day when I get a new patron. So I highly recommend you look into it and see if it's for you. So when it comes to the injury report here, we haven't heard much on the Candace Parker injury. James Wade's kind of been, pretty quiet about it. He just mentioned that she's doing everything she can to get back, and again, Candace Parker sends her own message about how much she wants to be back, and if she could, she would be back. I'm not a medical professional, and I'm not going to pretend to be one here on this podcast. So what I will say is, the image did not look good of the swollen ankle. Obviously, we don't know how quickly that swelling is going to go down, how painful it is, and when you can get to professional athletic movement on it. So right now, I'm just kind of taking it day by day, maybe even week by week until I get more information. I have no idea. If she was back on Friday, that would surprise me. But also, like I said, I don't have any knowledge on that kind of injury. And the team isn't being very clear about whether it's day to day or week to week. They're just saying she's working as hard as she can. We're getting similar conversations about the hamstring injury with Allie Quigley. I have suffered hamstring and quad injuries before, minor. I don't know the severity of Quigley's, but I can say they are nagging, they are annoying, they are painful, and they are frustrating because you feel like maybe you can go and then 5-10 minutes into some activity and you're like, oh, actually I don't feel that good, and I'm not ready to go all out, go out at my best. And again, that's for me, who's just kind of a moderately athletic person, but definitely not a professional athlete by any stretch of the imagination. And for me, that's just a bit I've experienced how nagging those injuries can be. So I can't even imagine what someone like Allie Quigley's going through. So again, she's missed 3 games now, Allie Quigley and Candace Parker. So they've both missed the same amount of games. Hopefully they can return soon, but it's just really hard to kind of give a timeline without the Sky kind of being a little bit more open about what that timeline is. And maybe the truth is they just don't know. And that's why they can't give you one, because they don't want to say it's 2 weeks and then it becomes a month, and they don't want to say it's 2 weeks and it becomes 3 days. So I don't know. We're just kind of stuck in limbo here, and it would be obviously health is number one, and players have to be healthy. That matters more than anything. But from the Chicago Sky perspective, again, they're really shorthanded here, and they really need the help. But if you can't go, you can't go. So there's not much they can do about that. So hopefully we get good news soon. This is another reason why I mentioned health as such a key part to the WNBA season. The WNBA season is so short. It's so fleeting. It's only a few months, and really only like 2 really full months, especially this year with the Olympic break happening in July. They only play the back end of May, a little bit of September. You get a full month in June and August. Or actually, no, August starts on the 23rd. I think they come back from that July Olympic break. So it's a tough league. It's only 30 plus games, and they're stretched out in a few months, and that's it. So any type of injury, any type of setback that sets you back 2 weeks or a month can really annihilate playoff dreams and hopes and positioning. So we'll have to wait and see how serious these injuries are, and how much it impacts the team. We can already see they're 2-2, and I feel comfortable saying that if those 2 players were available, they would have at least won one of those games they lost. And that's a big difference. That's the difference between being above 500 and being at 500. And we still have more games coming up. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's the injury updates there. Dawson should be back in June once she's done with her Team USA obligations. So just a couple more games here left in May, a couple more days left in May, in fact. So I expect Dawson, she'll be healthy, she'll be ready, and that'll help a lot. That's a starting center who knows the offense, who knows how to play, who knows how to stretch the court, who knows how to shoot the long range jumper, and has been a starter on this James Wade system for a couple years now. So even just having someone like Stephanie Dawson back, that adds depth, that brings back a starting center, brings back an experienced player. That's going to be a tremendous help. So at worst case scenario, first games in June, we should have Dawson back, and hopefully we also get Parker and Allie Quigley back soon as well. Next up, I want to talk about the players who have kind of shined during these 4 games and the ones who have been a little disappointing. So what I find interesting so far with the performances from individual players is there's a few that have surprised me and a few that have, honestly kind of disappointed me a little bit. Let's start with the positive ones, because I like to generally be a positive person. So I think Ruthie Hebert is definitely at the top of the list. She's been phenomenal. She's had an increase in her role with Candace Parker and Dawson gone, and she's done a great job. She's now a walking double-double. She started in 2 games. She's gotten double-doubles in both games, and she's really played so much better this year, especially compared to last year. Again, I don't think we talk enough about how hard it is to be a WNBA rookie. The level from college to WNBA, that's a huge jump. I think it's one of the biggest jumps, and the WNBA, I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's one of the toughest leagues in all of sports. The parity is so balanced. It's so difficult. Every team has a few stars, and it's a tough league with how few roster spots there are. And as a rookie, going into the bubble scenario like she did last year and having to play in those circumstances, I think it was just so many factors into why she probably didn't look so great playing in the her first WNBA season like that. I think it was a lot going on. Obviously, last year was hard for many reasons. And imagine a rookie in that circumstance. Yeah, I'm not surprised that she struggled. But she went to play overseas. She played very well overseas, and she's brought that play back. I mentioned before the WNBA and overseas ball. It is kind of apples and oranges. It's a different style. There's so many different factors into why you might play so much better in overseas ball versus WNBA. It's a different style, different leagues, depends on what team you are, what kind of coaching strategies, the level of competition might be at, above, or below the WNBA. There's some leagues that are pretty tough and some that are a little bit, gentler than the WNBA are overseas. And I think she was in a good system. She played very well, and I did think that was going to translate because she was going to get a lot of reps in overseas play. And I think that was going to really help her playing in the WNBA this season. But I think she's exceeded all of our expectations so far. I don't know anyone who thought, she's going to be a walking double-double, playing 20-plus minutes and being a very effective player. And that's what she's been, at least since the injuries have hit the Chicago Sky, and she's kind of had to take a bigger role. She's really responded well to that new role. She's played fantastic, and defensively especially, that's where she really impressed me. I know she can kind of get a bucket, but defensively, she's really been fantastic. She had 4 blocks of the team's 5 blocks in, I believe that game was against the Liberty. Let me see if that is right. Yep, she had 4 of the team's 5 blocks against the Liberty, which is amazing defense. And I like what she's doing. She's being aggressive in her chasing down of blocks, but she's also being smart. There's been a few plays where she stood her ground, and when she knew she had the opponent in a tough spot, she didn't reach in trying to get the block, which could have resulted in a foul. She stayed there and forced the player to make an uncomfortable shot. They would miss that shot. She'd get the rebound, and we'd keep rolling from there. So I really like how much smarter she is as a defensive player. She definitely doesn't look like a fish out of water, which she did at times last year. It seemed like once teams got into their reads, she kind of got a little bit lost and was a little bit hesitant on what I need to do and where I need to go and how to approach this. This year, she seems much more comfortable, and it's showing on her play. So, huge shout out to Ruthie Hebert. She's been amazing, and she's definitely one of the shining stars so far on this team early in the season. Another player who's played really well is Kahleah Copper. Kahleah Copper has every season essentially improved her game. She's gotten better. She's been a better offensive player, more explosive player, more comfortable in her roles. And this year, she's really taking the next step. She's starting consistently, and she's playing some of the best basketball of her career. Just for context, in the previous game against the Atlanta Dream, she had 21 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. She's just been absolutely phenomenal. 54% shooting from the field. She's been great, and I think she's going to be a contestant for a most improved player in the entire WNBA because her stats have just exploded. Her career stats are 8 points, 2 rebounds, and almost 1 assist per game. That's her career stats. This season, she is averaging 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. So that is a huge jump in pretty much every single statistical category. She's been amazing. That's the kind of growth that you just don't normally see. And she's been going on this trajectory for a couple seasons now, but this season she's definitely taking the next step, playing the same amount of minutes as she did last year, but she's scoring another extra 4 points on her stat line. Yeah, she's just been amazing, and Kahleah Copper is definitely a player that I've been really a big fan of. I think she really grew a lot, even starting in late 2019, going into 2020. I thought she was an X factor player who was really not understood what her growth could be, and I kind of saw it early. I'm glad I talked about it back then. Some people thought I was just being a homer and just kind of seeing the best in a player that was like 8th, 9th in the rotation, but lo and behold, now she's there. She's starting, and she's having a career year. One more positive I want to talk about is a student, Adu Fall. Obviously, she was a Chicago Sky player a couple years back when the Sky had kind of the last normal year, 2019, and she was a great player. She hit a killer 3 against the Aces that kept that game tight, and it was back and forth, of course, with the infamous Hamby Heave, which I don't want to talk about, but she played great in those games, and she was a great player for this guy in 2019. In 2020, she did not play for the team, and now she's back on the team. I'm very excited and happy about that, and she's played really well. She's gotten in a bigger role now that Candace Parker and Dawson are out, and she's performing pretty well. She had 13 points, 9 rebounds and 1 assist against the Atlanta Dream on Tuesday. She's been playing pretty good, so I'm happy to have her back on the team. I think she adds depth. I think she adds experience. I think she can, obviously get a bucket. She knows the offense very well. She's played with James Wade's system before, and yeah, I'm just really happy that she's got an opportunity to be on this team again. And clearly, she's been one of the positives on the roster early in the year. All right, now it's time for the not so positives. There's a few players that honestly I've been a bit disappointed with, or so far I'm not the biggest fan of. One is Stephanie Watts. Now again, I know she's a rookie, but I just there were some questions when she was picked up during training camp. They chose, essentially people felt like they chose her over Lexi Brown, and they were wondering why that was. And I said, well, we'll see. I mean, we didn't get a lot of video footage or preseason tape on the Chicago Sky because the games weren't televised, and the media section just kind of a couple highlights here from training camp that really isn't a good way of seeing how the team was playing and who was playing well. So we didn't have much data, so I just had to say, we all had to just say, okay, well, we'll take James Wade's word for it and let's see what happens. And so far she has not played well at all. She has gotten a little bit of run in a few games. The previous game against the Atlanta Dream, she played 18 minutes, and then against the New York Liberty, she played 15 minutes as well. And in both games, she was pretty underwhelming. Only had 2 points against the Liberty, and she only scored 2 points again against the Atlanta Dream. So, and she did shoot a good amount. She was 1 for 4 against the Liberty and against the Dream, and she was 0 for 3 against the Liberty. So she just hasn't really played well. I just think this is a bit too much for her right now. I try to be kind to rookies because they're rookies. We don't know where their careers are going to go. We just talked earlier about Ruthie Hebert and the growth she's had. So, Stephanie Watts worked really hard to get here. I don't want to discredit any of that, but at the same time, she just hasn't played well. This is too much for her. 15 minutes is way, way too much. I understand the team's short-handed, so sometimes that's what happens. You have to play more because there are no alternatives, and that just might be a reality of the situation for this guy. But she hasn't played well, and I would like to see less of her playing. Again, that might not be possible right now with the injuries and the roster limitations James Wade has, but she has not played well at all. So I'm okay seeing just one shift a game, 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. That's it. If she's hot, keep her in. If not, that's it. And so far, she really hasn't shown much in her performances. So unfortunately, a little bit disappointing, but also I don't think that's going to be her normal role anyway. So not a great performance from Stephanie Watts recently, but we'll see what her role will be moving forward. And another player that I wouldn't say necessarily disappointing, but definitely not playing amazing is Shyla Heal. Again, she didn't have a training camp. She didn't play any preseason games, and she just barely joined the team recently, and she's played in the 2 games against the Liberty and the Dream, the last 2 games where the Sky have lost. And again, she didn't look that great. Again, she looked like a rookie, just a little bit fish out of water, a little too much. Didn't seem to have any explosion against anyone. Wasn't really, strong defensively. And, I think it's just a matter of, being a rookie, being young. It's been a lot to try to adjust, joining the team and having to right away try to contribute at all. But she again hasn't looked that great. But similar to Stephanie Watts, it's kind of a wait and see approach because the data we have on them is so little. I mean, I'm sure if she hit 3 threes, we'd be talking about, is she like a triple threat, a 3-point threat or something like that, because we don't have that much to watch. But so far, I mean, I can only talk about what we've seen. And in 4 games, this is what we've seen. And we haven't seen a spectacular performance from her. So hopefully that improves as well. But so far, that's been disappointing here, seeing Shyla Heal's contributions to the team, especially given the fact the team has not as many players available. This is a chance for some players to try to shine. Ruthie Hebert has shined. Astuna Dufall has shined. Stephanie Watson and Shyla Heal, not so much. And just quick on Shyla Heal, I find it interesting. I've seen some people, on Chicago Sky Twitter kind of mention that she's going to be the backup point guard, and that's her role, and it's going to be really important for her to back up Vandersloot and contribute to the team in that respect. And honestly, I just don't see that. I really think Shyla Heal will play limited minutes, under 10 minutes a game, regularly when the team has everyone healthy. And I don't look at her as really a backup point guard for Courtney Vandersloot. I don't think we have a backup point guard for Courtney Vandersloot, one that's going to be consistent, contribute well, and you can just pencil that person in as the backup point guard. They're going to play backup minutes and kind of be the second person in charge whenever Vandersloot's not on the court. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Sky really have a bona fide backup point guard that's going to be that reliable on the roster. I think it's going to be kind of a by committee thing. I think obviously Vandersloot is averaging around 30 minutes. That leaves 10 minutes of time where she's not on the court. And I think traditionally when the team is healthy, you'll probably see a combination of maybe Parker comes in and she's kind of a point forward in those scenarios for a shift or so. And then maybe you do get a little bit of Shyla Hill, a little bit of, maybe Watts running the point, things like that. But I don't think there'll be anyone who plays even above 11 minutes at the backup point guard spot. I just don't think the Sky have a player of that capability on the roster. So I really don't think Shyla Hill is going to be a make or break player or have to be a really good backup point guard or else the team won't be able to achieve their goals. I just don't see it that way. I don't think that's going to be her role. I don't think she's going to be that vital to this team's year. I think they're just hoping that, she can contribute a little bit, improve as the season goes along. And like I said, if she can play 5-10 minutes, that's great. I don't think we should be expecting much more from her. And I don't think there will be much more from her this year. Based on what we've seen as well, I think that's about right. 5-10 minutes max. If you can play great. If not, hey, at least it gives us rest in the Courtney Vandersloot less minutes. And hopefully it's not devastating to the team when Vandersloot's off the court. Okay, so let's go into the games coming up. What's happening with the Sky? So for the rest of the week, there's only 2 more games left, and they are back-to-back games against the LA Sparks. They're both home games, which is interesting. So it's almost like a playoff series. So the Sky are playing the LA Sparks on Friday at 7 p.m., and they're also going to play the LA Sparks again on Sunday at 5 p.m. So again, it's a little bit weird, a little bit interesting. I think it's hard to beat the same team back-to-back like that. You really have to dominate, and with the Sky's injury report and how things are going with the team, I think that it's logical to think they'll split it, even though the LA Sparks have not looked good at all. They're really struggling with so many roster changes, including Candace Parker being gone. So I think they're really struggling. Obviously, their record kind of reflects that, and I can totally see the Sky winning both games, but I think the more logical thing is to win one, lose one, because, like I said, it's really hard to dominate a team like that and win back-to-back games. Usually there's adjustments made, and it's just hard to replicate that same success on back-to-back games. And for the month of May, I had the Sky going 4-2. So far, they're 2-2. So we're not too far away from my prediction. I would need the Sky to win these 2 games, and I'm feeling kind of skeptical that's going to happen. But we'll see. I would love to obviously be right, at least with the holistic number of 4-2 for the month of May. But we're going to find out in a couple of days how the Sky do in those games. Now, this podcast, again, is bi-monthly, which means we won't have another episode to the week of June 6th. So by then, we'll be a little bit past the first quarter of the season. We'll have played over 8 games, and we'll be done with, 25% of the season. So I like to, at that time, kind of address what's obviously happened in the games since the podcast, and also I like to give early season awards right away. People always talk about it's early in the season, and my kind of rebuttal to that is like, okay, well, when is it not early in the season? When is it okay to start assessing players and assessing the year and doing that? Everyone always says it's too early, but they don't actually tell me when it's appropriate. So what I like to do is I just like to look at the season in quarters: first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. It's very simple. You just divide the games up in 4, and then there you go. So once we finish the June 3rd game against the Phoenix Mercury, the Sky will officially have played 8 games and finished the first quarter of the year. So for the next podcast, just kind of a little bit of a spoiler for what's coming up next, I'll be giving out the kind of end of the year, kind of the first quarter report card, essentially. Most improved, defensive player, peak performers, MVP. We're going to talk about all those things after 8 games, see where the team is at, and then I'll continue doing that after every quarter. Once we hit 16, once we hit 24, and obviously the 32. So be on the lookout for that in the next podcast. It should be really fun, kind of breaking it down, and I'd love to see what people's opinions are. Again, that's probably going to change, but it's nice to kind of have that data of this is where we thought things were after 8 games, and at the halfway point, at the third quarter point, and the end of the year, ultimately, where do players land, who was on what position, and how did that change? I always find that personally interesting, and I'm really excited at the prospect of taking a look at the season like that and seeing what's happening. Now, the other Chicago Sky games that are going to happen prior to the recording of the next podcast are as follows. June 1st, the Chicago Sky will be playing the Phoenix Mercury. And then June 3rd, the Chicago Sky will again be playing the Phoenix Mercury again. A lot of back-to-back games coming up here. And then June 5th, the Chicago Sky will be playing the LA Sparks again. So the next few games, it's LA, Phoenix, LA. So a lot of LA Phoenix games coming up here in the next 5 games. That's pretty much the only matchups you're going to see. So those will be tough. It's going to be tough to win a majority of those games because it's going to be against the same opponents. You're going to be seeing the same players, and they're going to be making adjustments, kind of to the good and bad that happened in the respective games. All right, so that's pretty much going to wrap up today's podcast. Let me know what you think about the format we're having so far. So give me any feedback you have on how you like the format, how you like the flow, the length of the podcast. I will be having some special guests coming up in the coming weeks and months as we get deeper into the season. Right now, I'm just trying to kind of establish, kind of the flow and how the organization of the podcast is. Put my own spin on the kind of podcast that I've listened to and that all of you are used to listening to. But I will be having some guests as well to add in different perspectives and kind of have a longer conversation. So let me know what you like, what you would like to be changed. If there's anything you'd like to have changed, and I'll make the adjustments appropriately based on the community. So again, this isn't just my podcast. It's a podcast about the Chicago Sky for Chicago Sky fans. So if you're listening to this, that means you're a Chicago Sky fan. And I want to hear some feedback from you on what you think of the podcast. So again, the next podcast will air on the week of June 6th. And by then, hopefully, Candace Parker has returned. Allie Quigley is back. Stephanie Dawson is playing amazing, and she's back from her Team USA duties. Hopefully, the Chicago Sky are above 500. And we'll give out the first quarter grades, the first quarter awards. Who's our MVP? Who's Sixth Woman of the Year? And again, it'll all be from the Chicago Sky perspective. I'm not going to be doing the WNBA, just looking at the team, and if I had to give MVP, Sixth Woman, Most Improved, just on that roster, for that roster, who would win those awards. So it's going to be exciting to break all that down, and hopefully we have some more Chicago Sky victories to talk about. So that concludes the podcast, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.